This is an episode of my podcast, Self-Love and Spiritual Growth. You can find links to my podcast in the description below. Thank you for listening. Welcome to Self-Love and Spiritual Growth with Natasha Hynes, where I remind you that you came here to be the light in a dark world. So yeah, sometimes it's gonna hurt. Sometimes it might even feel like you're not gonna make it through, but you can. And you will. You're doing better than you even know. Welcome to Self-Love and Spiritual Growth with myself, Natasha Hynes. Today we're going to be talking about how to find your soul tribe. I'm not talking about your soul mates or your soul family. I'm talking about the people that you want around you, the tribe you want to cultivate after you've awakened. Anyone who's gone through a spiritual awakening most likely has experienced a phase, and possibly still in this part of your life, where you have lost many people in your life or are in the process of losing many people in your life who used to be very close. You might have fewer friends or even no friends sometimes, and family members might ostracize you. Just all kinds of reasons why you start losing more people in your life, and you become more and more isolated. Sometimes, actually a lot of the time, you self-isolate. But both of these aspects, whether it's you pushing the world away or it's the world running away from you, both of those aspects apply. You're probably experiencing both of them. It's bad enough that we live in a world where we're all basically isolated a lot more than what it's been like in the past. At my age, I'm in an age where I'm old enough that I remember what it was like before the internet, where people actually had to interact with each other face to face. Where when you were a kid, you weren't sitting at home playing video games, you were outside in the street. I know some people are like, well, how old are you? I'm old. No, I'm just joking. Nowadays, people are always on their phones, on computers, playing video games in front of Netflix. Whatever, we always have a screen in front of us, and the way that we communicate with people is via text messaging, comments. It's always in front of some sort of screen. Not always, but you get what I mean. The majority of the time, we're communicating with each other. The bulk of our connection with each other is with this massive gap between us physically. And there is a huge difference between messaging someone and speaking to someone face to face. There is so much information that gets lost when you can't see someone's face, when you can't see their facial expressions. There's so much information in the subtlest things when you're interacting with a person in real life. Tone of voice, body language. These are all things that are extremely important when you're communicating with someone, and they all get lost in the way that we communicate nowadays. There's also an energetic connection that we're losing when you're not with someone, when you're not in the presence of someone. Humans give off an electromagnetic field. This is scientifically proven. I'm not making it up. It is a real measurable thing. And when you are in the physical presence of someone else, you can feel it. It emanates from the heart. So on a subconscious level, on a level that we are not even necessarily aware of while it's happening, we communicate with each other through the heart. So when you are physically in someone's presence, you're getting something out of the interaction that you're probably not getting through social media or text messaging. Now, besides all that, besides the fact that generally the population has lost a lot of our interpersonal skills and our connection with each other, besides that, if you have gone through a spiritual awakening or are in the process of it, what happens is that the people that were in your life before you started your awakening won't be on your level anymore. You won't be mentally, emotionally in the same world. You won't have the same interests anymore. When you start to awaken, you start to realize that all the things that you thought were important are not important, and all the things that you thought were not important are extremely important. So you don't have as much in common with people who are not awake. So then it becomes a struggle to maintain a relationship with them because it feels like you're being fake. And when you're not being fake, they think you're weird or crazy. And then when you start to really dive deep into your spiritual growth and start focusing on becoming a better version of yourself and speaking from a place of love and non-judgment, that makes people who are not awake, that are not ready, that are not on the path, extremely uncomfortable. And when they get uncomfortable, they can attack you. They attack you because you're making them uncomfortable, or that's what they're perceiving. They think that what you're doing and saying, since it's making them uncomfortable, you must be somehow in the wrong. They don't really understand what's going on or what's happening to them. And they don't have the patience to try to listen to your perspective and understand what you're trying to say. They're experiencing massive cognitive dissonance. Cognitive dissonance is what happens when you have a belief system that's challenged. Your mind wants to hold on to your current belief system. So when any kind of evidence that opposes your current belief system is in front of your face, your mind gets really annoyed. That's why there's so many people on social media arguing over the dumbest stuff, because we're triggered by anything that opposes our beliefs. And the only way to get to the point where you're no longer experiencing the cognitive dissonance is when you are exposed to enough contradicting evidence that it overrides your current belief system, and you accept the new information, you accept the new paradigm, you accept the new belief system as your own. And if you're thinking that it's your job to help the people around you see the truth or to understand your beliefs or your perspective, I'm going to give you a friendly reminder that it is not your place, because they have their own path. They have their own journey with its own timing and things that they need to experience for whatever they need to learn for their own soul growth. So they need to awaken when it's right for them, and they might not awaken in this lifetime. Fortunately, I believe the majority of people will. At their own pace, they will. However, if they are a narcissist or a psychopath, they will never, ever, 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 ever truly awaken. I've personally known psychopaths or narcissists who are able to fake it. So narcissists and psychopaths can give you the impression that they are awake, Well, when you look beneath the surface, you'll notice that they're not. They're not living service to others. They're living service to self. But the majority of people who are not narcissists will, in my opinion, most likely awaken in this lifetime, because we are going through a quickening of the awakening process. Meaning over the next couple of years, a lot more people who you didn't even expect would awaken are going to awaken. It's going to blow your mind. This is my prediction. So in a year or two, if you're listening to this podcast, call me on it. Tell me if I was right or not. But I feel like people that you never would have expected to wake up are going to wake up over the next year, 2 years, few years. In the meantime, it's not your job to force anyone awake. It's not your job to work on someone, to fix them. It's your job to live by example. The reason we end up self-isolating ourselves is partly because we find that we have nothing in common with people around us, and we feel like we're being fake and we can't be ourselves, and it feels like a chore to have a discussion with someone. But also because a lot of us, most of us, if not all of us, are going through a healing process. That's a big part of most of what a spiritual awakening is. It's the healing. And when you're going through the healing process, one of the things you need to do is get away from the people who have been hurting you, the toxic people that have been in your life. And if you are highly sensitive or empathic or a very spiritual person, you've likely encountered a lot of toxic people. Because for some reason, partly because they're attracted to us, and I've talked about this in other pieces of content in different places, but partly because they are drawn to us, and partly because we chose to incarnate around them so that we can learn certain things, so that we could have those experiences for our own personal growth, and so that we could understand what we needed to do for our mission, or to better assist us in our mission. So you've most likely encountered a lot of toxic people in your life. And so what happens when you start to heal yourself and go through the awakening is that you start to purge all the toxic people in your life. And this could happen in a moment, and it could happen over the course of many years. The hardest ones to purge are the longest relationships that you've had, in my opinion, a lot of the time anyways. The ones where you have history together, the ones where you've been friends since you were kids or whatever, or family members that kind of piss you off, but not enough that you think that it's an emergency to get rid of them. Eventually, at some point, you get rid of all the toxic people. And it's dependent on where you are in your growth process. The higher you evolve, the less tolerant you are of the toxicity. So the least toxic people get purged the last. The most toxic people get purged first, generally. Because they're the obvious problem. They're the biggest problem. This is often a painful process. It's a difficult process. And what ends up happening is that you end up often alone or almost alone. And it's very difficult to purge the last few people because sometimes they might be the only people you have left. And you might cling to them just because you're afraid to be alone, because you feel lonely. Being lonely is depressing. And going through the awakening can be depressing. So the first phase is the purging of people. Then there's the next phase of being alone, which is a process of self-healing and inner growth, and a process of learning to be alone, to be with yourself, and getting to the point where being alone is no longer depressing and some sort of torture, but it's actually fun and amazing. It's something that you want. And these phases all overlap, okay? They're not necessarily, there's no real cut and dry lines between them. They usually overlap. The third phase is a phase that maybe a lot more people are moving into now, because it's a difficult phase as well. They're all difficult for their own reasons. They're all difficult. But once you've been alone long enough that you have learned to like being alone and become truly independent. So you've become independent of needing validation from people. You don't need attention or adoration from people. You love yourself, so you can fulfill yourself. You can fulfill your own needs. Once you're at that point, you move into phase 3. And phase 3 is when you have to stop being alone. So being alone can be complicated. It is complicated because part of you believes that you are alone involuntarily, and part of you wants to be alone because people have hurt you. A lot of us have been so badly hurt by people that we have trust issues and trauma, PTSD, and making new friends and opening our heart to people can be terrifying, because you're intelligent enough to understand that there's a pattern, and so that you can predict, or your prediction is that since every time you've let people into your life, they have hurt you, then if you do the same action again, you'll get the same results. So if you let people in again, they're going to hurt you. That's the pattern that we recognize as an intelligent person. So we are scared to let people in. So part of us wants people, and part of us pushes people away. So if you haven't gotten to the point where you've healed your trust issues and your trauma and your PTSD, and started validating yourself and started loving yourself and become fully emotionally independent, and I've talked about this in a previous podcast about ending the cycle of attracting narcissists. If you haven't done that work and healed, you're going to likely draw more of the same into your life, where you're drawing people into your life that might not be right for you, like I discussed in that podcast. And also, you are likely to, on some level, self-sabotage, to sabotage your new relationships because of your trust issues. And this applies even when you're making new friendships with awakened people who are highly spiritual and kind and trustworthy, because it's in your head. So you need to focus on your self-healing if you want to really cultivate your tribe and bring in those new people into your life, the people that you've always wanted in your life. The people that you feel comfortable around because they get you and you get them, and your conversations are interesting because you have things in common. They're working on themselves, and you need to work on yourself so that your relationships are not volatile, that you don't sabotage yourself or the relationship, and you can maintain these new, positive, loving relationships. And as you start to grow emotionally, spiritually, heal, and overcome your issues, your heart begins to open, and you allow yourself to be more vulnerable, and you allow people in, and you allow yourself to be more of who you truly are. You grow into yourself. As you become more of who you are, you attract people who reflect who you truly are. And who you truly are is someone who is loving and kind and trustworthy. And as you grow into that, other people who are growing into themselves are drawn to you, and you're drawn to them. And the universe will put you into each other's path. And I know this from firsthand experience. Originally, when I started working on myself and getting to the point where I was ready to break free of the self-isolation and start allowing people into my life, and I wanted to have more spiritually minded friends, people who are like-minded, I thought I was going to have to make this massive effort. I made an actual plan. I was like, okay, where do these people hang out? And how can I find them? And this is how I'm going to get to this place. And then this is how I'm going to start talking to people, and how I'm going to introduce myself, and how I'm going to get the right people to find me. And all this very 3D stuff, 3D planning. And what happened in reality was that plan never got executed because I didn't need to. I just got into the right mind state where I was ready for them, and they just started appearing. I was inspired to take action when I needed to, if I needed to message someone or comment somewhere or whatever, and I just started meeting all the right people, the people that are meant to be around me because we are like-minded, and they wanted similar thinking friends just as much as I did. So we found each other because we became ready around the same time. It just works that way. It just works in this magical way that your 3D mind just will never really grasp. So to recap, phase 1 or stage 1 is when you awaken and start purging or losing the people around you. Some of that is going to be your personal decision to stop spending so much time with people who are not mixing with your energy, or who are making you feel bad for your new beliefs or for your growth, and who are triggered whenever you are authentic. The second part is where you are alone and you are putting your energy into healing yourself. The reason why you need to be alone during that phase is because, as I have said before in multiple times, is that when you're toxic, you don't mix well with emotionally healthy people. You scare them and they scare you, kind of thing. So in order to get to the point where you are emotionally healthy, you need a buffer period where you are more or less alone, where you can do the healing so that you can become emotionally healthy. And then when you come out of it in stage 3 is when you start mixing well with people who are in alignment with where you're at, people whose energy mixes well with yours, who you enjoy having around, who make you feel good about yourself. So the third part as well is you're going to have to make an active choice to move into that. Because even though I said, as you heal, you begin to attract people who reflect your healing. At the same time, if you are someone who has been traumatized and hurt and have lots of trust issues, even once you have healed, you'll still have that fear of letting people back in because of the pattern recognition. Because you recognize that every time you let someone in, they hurt you. So even though you're healed and you're attracting healthy people that won't hurt you, you still have that fear that when you let your guard down and you let people in, that they will hurt you. And that is going to be a block that you have to work through, that you have to push through, that you have to make a choice to take the chance on people. You have to trust that you have become healthy and are now seeing red flags in people who are not trustworthy, and that you are attracting trustworthy people. And you have to take the chance on people to let them in. But as speaking from experience, once you get to a point in your healing where you are comfortable standing up for yourself, that you have good boundaries, that you can assert yourself, and that you can see the red flags, and that you have become a better judge of character, then it's not going to be as scary as it might sound or it might seem. When you finally get to that point, it might just take a little nudge. You're nudging yourself, but it's still a little bit of a nudge to get you over that little boundary, to get you over that little obstacle. And there's other things that you can do as well. There's even just sometimes energy work does a lot. I worked with an energy alchemist, Claire, who I've spoken about on Instagram and YouTube, YouTube, Instagram, and Facebook. And she had a session with me where it really worked on my heart blocks, and we got a lot done in a very short period of time. So you can take on all kinds of modalities to try to heal. Just have faith that as long as you're going through the process, taking one step forward at a time, that even though sometimes it feels like you're not getting anywhere or feels scary, you will get there. Thanks for listening. If you like this podcast, please subscribe and join me next week for a new episode. I have lots of free stuff for you if you want to check out my website. The link should be in the description. Thank you very much, and I'll see you next time. Bye.